At a class reunion dinner, I got drunk and started playing Truth or Dare. I was dared to text my boyfriend, "I'm pregnant." Everyone was curious about how my cool and distant academic genius boyfriend would react. To everyone's surprise, he replied almost instantly, "Okay, I'll take care of it." When I saw his reply, everyone started teasing, but I suddenly snapped back to reality. We haven't even kissed. Plus, we broke up 2 months ago. Congratulations from the people around started floating in. Are you two moving so fast you're getting married soon? Don't forget to invite us old classmates to the wedding. See, I told you, only Sandy could handle Richard, the one everyone said wouldn't work out. Who's laughing now? By the way, where's Richard today? Why didn't he come? Are you kidding? He's the CEO of Richard Group now, closing million-dollar deals all the time. I'm so jealous, Sandy. He's so busy yet replied to you instantly. You're so lucky. My hands trembled holding the phone, and my toes curled with embarrassment. Is there anything more ridiculous than telling your ex you're pregnant 2 months after breaking up? I was the one who initiated the breakup. I decided to save face and hesitantly typed, "Sorry, sent to the wrong person." But at the same time, he messaged back with, "Where are you now?" I didn't respond, hoping I could just let it slide. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I should have deleted him back then instead of keeping him as a contact. Who keeps their ex as a contact? But, I sighed silently, he's just too outstanding. I turned off my phone, but it lit up again with another message, "Address." It was Richard again. I took a deep breath. I said it was a mistake. Where I am now is none of your business. There was a pause. I said, "I'll take responsibility for the child." "The child isn't yours." "I'll take care of it." I didn't respond to him again. I don't even remember why we broke up. It was me who chased him, but all I got was the title of girlfriend. He treated me well, gave expensive gifts, and always replied to messages and calls immediately. But he wasn't passionate about me at all. Can you believe that after 3 years of dating, the most intimate thing we did was hold hands? Even hugs were rare, and the closest Richard got to me was a restrained kiss on my cheek. I thought, if he's not going to be proactive, I'll be. After all, he's used to being admired. I planned a candlelit date. On the fluffy sofa, we sat properly on each side. With dim lighting and a romantic movie playing, I slowly moved close to him, hooking my little finger around his clothes. But he only gently put his arm around me, avoiding even touching my waist. I was so frustrated, I tried to kiss the corner of his mouth, but he caught on quickly. Richard held my restless head, looked at me darkly for a long time, then quietly turned off the projector and held me close, coaxing me to sleep instead. Back then, I wondered, he seems capable, but maybe, just maybe, he isn't in that department. Just to be safe, no matter how handsome he is, I wouldn't marry an impotent man. So, I planned to get engaged but first insisted on both of us doing a premarital checkup. I supervised the whole thing to make sure he didn't use his influence to trick me into marriage. The results came back, and he was perfectly fine. I once saw a question on Quora, "Why doesn't my boyfriend like to touch me?" One answer was, either he's like that, or he's just not into you. It's clear Richard treats everyone coldly, male or female. He generally doesn't get too close to anyone. So, he just wasn't into me. I was just suitable. There was no interest on his part. Feeling sad, I wiped away the tears that threatened to fall. Luckily, the reunion was wrapping up, and everyone was saying their goodbyes. I walked out of the hotel. It was already dark. Under the bright streetlights, I noticed it had started to drizzle, turning to rain. A college friend asked if he was picking me up. Before I could shake my head no, a black Bentley pulled up in front of me, and my classmates gasped. My friend whispered enviously, "I shouldn't have asked." The front window rolled down, revealing Richard's personal driver. So Richard was in the back seat waiting for me. "Miss Sandy, Richard wants you to get in the car." Caught between a rock and a hard place, I gritted my teeth and opened the door, thinking I could explain the pregnancy mix-up. Richard wore a deep black suit, lying back against the seat, his chiseled jawline exposed. His wristwatch occasionally flickered in the dim light of the car. Startled, I hadn't even started speaking, and I was already feeling flustered. He sat up, took off his glasses, rubbed his tired-looking eyebrows, then looked at me. His facial features were still exquisitely handsome, with that alluring and reserved aura even more captivating. After gathering my thoughts, I decided to be straightforward. It was just a dare. I'm not pregnant. I only sent it to you because they insisted. I had no choice. Richard gave me an amused look. They don't know we broke up. I blushed at my own reply because, yes, on the day before the engagement, I broke up with him. Richard was fairly responsible about the engagement, meticulously choosing the engagement ring. I could tell he was meticulous about the whole thing, but I still couldn't shake my doubts about whether he really loved me. So, when I said I wanted to break up, the busy Richard's expression changed. Why? I used a cliché from a romance novel, because your family offered me $5 million to stay away from you. I'm greedy, so I don't want you anymore. Richard looked annoyed. Sandy, don't joke about this. I was serious, Richard, we're not suitable. Richard didn't believe it, but he looked uneasy, something rarely seen on his usually confident face. I took off the engagement ring and placed it on his desk. No need for the ceremony. I've already told our friends not to come. In reality, I never told them about us getting engaged. I thought if Richard had just stopped me when I said I wanted to break up, or if he showed some emotion, I would have stayed. At least it would have meant I held some place in his heart. Unfortunately, I said break up, and so we did. Reflecting on that, I awkwardly smiled. Maybe they just forgot. Forgot? Richard seemed doubtful. I fell silent, looking out at the passing scenery until I recognized my neighborhood. All right, I'm nearly there. Just drop me here. It was still raining outside. I opened the door, intending to quickly dash out, but a large hand pulled me back, throwing me against Richard's chest. After 2 months, this familiar yet strange scent was intoxicatingly restrained and sexy. I expected him to push me away since even when we were a couple, such intimacy was rare. His chin was right above my head, and when he talked, I could clearly see his sexy Adam's apple moving. Can I come up for a glass of water? He said it in such a flirty way, it was deadly. I wanted to say no, but I was tempted into saying, sure. He pulled out a black umbrella and put an arm around my waist in the most intimate way possible. I awkwardly tried to pull away, but he firmly held me close. His pace was steady, a gentle smile on his face, but I suddenly felt a chill until we were upstairs and inside. Richard pinned me against the wall. He tilted my chin up, his gaze fixed on my lips, tracing them over and over. He leaned in close, his voice a deep whisper. I almost thought you were with someone else. Damn, after 2 months away, he'd turned slick? Pressing against the cool wall, my forehead grew hot. I half-heartedly tried to push him away. We're broken up. Richard brushed some stray hair from my face, his touch grazing my cheek. Sandy, you know, I never wanted that. Oh really? Just because you didn't want it doesn't mean we can't break up. He gripped my dangling wrist, his warmth melting my resolve. Richard didn't answer straight away. Instead, he pulled a ring from his pocket. In his broad palm lay the ring, glowing under the distant light of neon signs outside, the expensive diamond shimmering brilliantly. The brightness hurt my eyes. I opened my mouth to ask the question but feared the answer. In this relationship, I always felt small. From the moment I liked him, I'd been backtracking. Richard and I were college mates. Back in freshman year, my roommate who loved gossip was the first to mention him. He was a rich kid from the our group family. His brother was a famous singer, his dad was in politics, his mom in business. The family fortune was so vast he couldn't spend it in 3 lifetimes. Everyone figured some wealthy prince like him would waste it away in bars or try risky stunts on deserted highways. Or be bossy in high society, always surrounded by pretty people. But Alice's assumptions were upended when she saw Richard speak at the freshman welcoming speech. He wore a spotless shirt, rich but not overbearing, perfectly calm and distant. Not a flicker of interest in his eyes from either envy or contempt around him. After his speech, when some leader, trying to curry favor, displayed his awards and achievements on a big screen, those who thought privileged kids were lazy finally shut up. I still remember Alice gripping my arm tightly. Why the hell is someone so rich also so damn good? Richard instantly became the talk of the campus. Wherever he went, love confessions followed. Countless tried and failed, yet more lined up. Meeting Richard was pure luck. While out shopping off campus, for some reason, artless me walked into a calligraphy exhibition. The room was filled with powerful, passionate brushstrokes, the air smelling of rich ink. Layer after layer of hanging calligraphy, swaying in the breeze, and through them, I glimpsed Richard at the far end, part of the inky scene. He was writing, his wrist hovering elegantly, every stroke purposeful, his tan coat the only spot of color. The moment was too beautiful. I reached for my phone to capture it. But the room was too dim, and my phone flashed. Richard, paused by the interruption, simply glanced at me then walked away. Maybe he was used to people sneaking photos. It took me a while to gather courage and approach the spot where he'd been, a slight chill wrapping around me. Through the layered works, I saw the world outside, falling snow illuminated by streetlights, hinting at mysteries. It was snowing. Back at the dorm, I couldn't calm down. I used to think people chased fame pointlessly, but now, it felt like fate brought us together. I was wrapped in the romance of our accidental meeting. So when I told Alice I wanted to pursue Richard, she tugged at my ear, making me yelp while our roommate sighed. Do you even know this guy? So many have gone after him, and did any succeed? Are you out of your mind? I nodded but remained determined. I became one more in the crowd lining Richard's route to class, each morning putting on my makeup and picking the same public lectures, donning a stylish dress even in the cold. Yet Richard never gave me a second glance. To him, I was no different from the others. Frustrated, I remembered the calligraphy exhibit. Richard's hobbies were secretive, but that was my one clue. I retraced my steps to the exhibition. In this fast food world, some stopped by out of curiosity, but when I entered with intent, the hall was always empty. I saw Richard again. This time holding my phone tight, I approached cautiously. Richard was engrossed in grinding ink. Hello? I began, unsure. He paused, glanced up indifferently. Feel free to look around. The exhibit's free. His voice was more solitary than in his speech. Flustered, I struggled to keep the conversation going. Suddenly, I noticed a new piece behind him, a poem. Feigning ignorance, I pointed, that one looks great. Richard chuckled softly, all the pieces here are by the same person. Awkward, I laughed, no wonder I like them all. So, could I get this artist's contact? His look was knowing as he set down the ink, getting ready to leave. Seeing him about to leave, I panicked and blurted, sorry, I know these are yours. I'm a fan of calligraphy but struggle with it, hoping you could give me some tips. Lucky I'd put in some practice beforehand. My calligraphy wasn't bad. He hesitated, sounding unexpectedly lonesome. I'm not that good. What? You're amazing. But all I saw was his retreating figure. Whenever I got a chance, I returned to the gallery. The more I showed up, the more I saw Richard. But I kept away on campus. If he knew we were classmates, he'd definitely suspect I had ulterior motives. My calligraphy was full of flaws. Initially, he didn't want to teach me, but my atrocious chicken scratch made him talk more. Eager after each practice, I'd rush to have him critique my work. Slowly, Richard and I became friends. So, eventually, I just decided to sit down at that desk and practice calligraphy too. Richard didn't seem to mind. Our relationship was kind of in a gray area for a long time. Nothing new happened between us. The turning point wasn't exactly pleasant. One day, I had been staying up late for days trying to finish a paper. I just wanted to rest, but I didn't want to miss it either. So I sat there practicing with panda eyes, but my mind was elsewhere. I closed my eyes without realizing it. Richard tried to gently wake me up. But I got startled, and the ink brush in my hand went flying, splattering his white shirt with ink. I was horrified. I couldn't afford to replace that shirt. I shrieked, and in my panic, tried to remove the stains, but just made it worse. I was feeling desperate. To make matters worse, I was practically throwing myself at Richard like some wild animal. I could feel his heartbeat under my hands, and his face was a mix of shock. We were so close, we could feel each other's breath. Richard seemed flustered. He avoided eye contact, and his pale face turned an unusual shade of red. I quickly moved away, embarrassed, and messed with my hair. Sorry, I got too excited. I'll pay for it, I said, pointing to his shirt. Richard sat up straight, smoothed his clothes, shook his head, and coldly said, "No need. It's late. You should leave." His voice sounded more distant than ever, and my heart just broke hearing it. In dramas and novels, isn't this the moment where the lead's feelings warm up? Why doesn't it apply to me and Richard? The calligraphy class was over. I never saw him in our usual spot again. I had totally messed up any chance with Richard. I tried avoiding him on campus, but couldn't find him off campus. When the annual art festival started, Alice signed me up for a solo dance performance. When one path is blocked, find another. Richard might not know you're from the same school, but he didn't ask either. So it's not like you lied. I hadn't danced in years, but wanted to impress Richard just this once. I practiced hard, and on the day of the performance, I expected Richard, head of the student council and art festival, to be the judge. But his seat remained empty through several performances. As I started my dance, I kept glancing at that spot. Even after I finished, he didn't show up. As I was leaving the stage, distracted and with a strained ankle from rehearsing, I fell hard. Instead of impressing him, I ended up as the latest gossip on the campus wall. While recovering in the hospital, I saw Richard again. Just when I thought things couldn't work out, fate opened another door. He visited, representing the student council, surrounded by a bunch of students, mostly squealing girls. Richard placed some fruit on the table. I felt guilty looking at his serious face. Of course, he was upset when he found out I was in the same school. "Sandy, get well soon." With that, he left, barely spending a moment more, followed by that excited group of girls who looked back and smiled as they left. I was so mad I almost couldn't hold back. I had prepared so many apologies but didn't get to say any of them. My foot was wrapped up thick, and I looked pathetic. Alice had class today, so I had to do everything myself. Even just getting water was a struggle. I was hopping on one foot when John reached the cup before me. Looking up, it was Richard who dumped the cold water and refilled it with warm. He wore a casual hoodie, no expression, and his thick lashes cast small shadows. The last cup got cold. "Drink this one." I was speechless. Why did he come back and even change clothes? The surprise and confusion made me forget my injured foot, and I instinctively tried to stand on both feet, yelping from the pain. A steady arm suddenly supported me. Richard easily held me. "Let me help you." "Why?" "No, wait, I wasn't trying to hide that we're classmates, I'm sorry." "I know." I was about to explain more, but he just said that. I looked at him, confused, as he placed a peeled orange in my hand. "You showed up in front of me so many times, how could I not remember you?" "True, just because I have face blindness doesn't mean everyone else does too." "Then why come back?" I hesitated, hoping it wasn't something else. Richard handed me a peeled apple. My hands were already full of the uneaten orange. "Can you pretend to be my girlfriend?" I almost dropped both fruits in shock. "Why?" Richard looked a little sad. I could see the sadness behind his eyes. "For my grandfather's funeral." Richard and his brother were 10 years apart. By the time Richard was born, his parents' careers were already established, and their relationship had grown distant. So Richard was raised by his grandfather. His grandfather loved practicing calligraphy. Young Richard couldn't sit still and always caused trouble during those times. Once, their parents got into a huge fight, ready for divorce, but their intertwined careers kept them tied as a couple in name only. Richard was used to their arguments. He preferred clinging to his grandfather, the last bit of family connection. One day, while attempting to draw a smiley face on a character, his once robust grandpa collapsed, becoming a vegetative patient. Whenever Richard saw his grandpa laying silently with vacant eyes, he regretted not behaving better back then. Recently, the calligraphy class suddenly disappeared because his grandpa woke up with a terminal diagnosis. When his grandpa saw Richard, he greeted him with a gentle voice, "Richard, you've grown so much. Do you have a girlfriend now?" Knowing all this, I feel even more for Richard. The day Grandpa passed away, it snowed heavily. White snowflakes floated with the funeral banners. I attended the funeral pretending to be Richard's girlfriend. After the funeral ended, everyone left. Well, a person who's been in a coma for years isn't exactly remembered. These couple of days were busy with the funeral. Richard's bangs have grown longer, covering his eyes and making him look wretched with pain. He took out a bottle of wine, pouring it in front of the grave. Looking at the picture of the old man, he smiled. "This was your favorite wine, your favorite snowy day. Now, let them accompany you." As the wind blew and the snow fell, I hoped the thoughts of the morning could travel far away. I was photographed attending Richard's family funeral, and it got posted on a confession wall. Everyone in the comments was speculating about our relationship. My roommate was amazed. "Wow, Sandy, you've even met the parents." I shook my head like a rattle. "It's fake, all fake." Then came his message. Richard asked to meet. I thought about dressing up but remembered the funeral just ended, so I just picked something decent. The lake had frozen over after the snow, with a few birds landing occasionally. Richard was there early, surrounded by a chill. I spoke first. "Richard, about the confession wall thing?" He looked down at me, no longer distant, and his tone softened. "I saw it all, Sandy. Would you be with me?" He didn't say he liked me, just asked if I was willing. In my joy, I said yes. Later, we dated like friends. Year after year, until college graduation when I was busy job hunting. Richard took over our group, always busy, gradually touched by fame and fortune, handling things decisively, unlike the boy at the calligraphy exhibit. He still found time for me amidst his busy schedule. I often wondered if I was asking for too much. Richard was good to me, yet I always felt he didn't love me. He's reserved, hides his feelings, and doesn't do surprises. He's never given me much emotional value. And yet, because of that romantic encounter, I kept convincing myself. The ring is still in front of me. I think of the patience and retreat over these 7, 8 years, yet I stood firm, pushing the ring away. I said we should break up. Then we'd be nothing. No sooner had I said it, Richard's soft lips touched mine, mingling warmth, as if my heart was pounding, freezing me in place. Richard, with eyes tightly shut, trembling lashes, holding my arms so tightly my shirt wrinkled. We stayed motionless for what seemed so long. Until my feet numbed, and I fell. Richard caught me in his arms, and I heard that same chaotic heartbeat. Suddenly, I saw the faint redness of his ears. As strength returned, I pushed him away, embarrassed. "What are you doing?" Richard had been in business for years. Seeing him flustered was unexpected. I don't want to break up." I fumed, looking at him in his tailored suit, smart face, yet emotionally clueless. I opened the door and pushed him out. The next day, at work, co-workers whispered. "Curious?" I asked. A gossipy colleague said. "There's a luxury car parked outside, more expensive than the boss's. Been there ages." I looked and indeed, it was Richard's. After work, heading home with colleagues, the car still drew attention. Strange, isn't he busy? I deliberately avoided him. A colleague whispered, I think the owner is waiting for someone. Which lucky girl snagged such a catch? I chuckled, a wealthy husband's not as good as being wealthy yourself. That makes sense, Sandy. Your year-end bonus will be hefty, so treat us. I glanced back. Richard's car was still there. If he can't find me here, he'll likely wait at home. Sure, dinner's on me, let's not leave sober. After a heart-aching dinner, I'd glamed about everything, drinking plenty. My colleague couldn't last, so called us a cab home. Wobbly, I climbed the stairs, fumbling for keys until Richard took them, unlocked the door, and brought me in. Seeing his face still as handsome as ever, I broke down. Why are you here again? I hate you. We're over, no more seeing each other. Richard tried to calm me. Sandy, it's my fault. Please, give me one more chance to pursue you again. No. My unstable steps mixed with drunken drama, laughing 1 minute, crying next, clinging to Richard, kissing and biting, singing, dancing. My first time being so wild, and the next day I couldn't recall any of it. I woke to breakfast and a note from Richard. I'll see you tonight. Let's catch your favorite play. Question marks filled my mind. What did I do yesterday? I wanted to end things and called. He picked up at once, laughing. Awake? I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back? His affectionate words effortlessly flowed, like unlocking a whole new side. The background was quiet until someone praised, Richard and his wife are sweet. Blushing, I quietly countered, we're nothing now. You don't need to come tonight. I won't go to the play. Richard chuckled on the other end, replying to the person, we're seeing the latest play tonight. My girlfriend loves them. Surprised, they said, not married yet? Soon, huh? Then congrats in advance. Annoyed, I hung up, packed to leave, then realized, this is my home, why run? Evening came quickly, and Richard showed up as promised. I watched him from the sofa. I'm not going. Unfazed, he pulled out his phone, playing a video. It was of my drunken antics last night, acting crazy and clingy with Richard. I whined, why don't you like me? Why never say you love me? Richard sighed, you're drunk. Come wash up and rest. I pointed, alternating fingers, teasingly saying, didn't you say you would pursue me? Like this, kiss me once, and I'll let you chase me. All I could see was the camera getting closer and closer, so close it was practically on me. Even an idiot would know what we were up to. I was frozen on the spot, shocked. Did I really do something this embarrassing? Richard put his phone away and shook the theater tickets in his hand. I denied everything. I was just drunk. You can't take a drunkard's words seriously. Richard looked a bit helpless. He pulled out his phone again, ready to hit play on the video. I quickly lunged at him, snatched the phone away, and deleted the video. But Richard looked way too confident. I had to ask, you didn't back it up, did you? His lips curled into a smile, and he nodded. Then he shook those theater tickets again. I had no choice. I was caught on his hook. While lining up to get in, I stayed a good 8 meters away from him. No one could tell we had anything to do with each other. He'd changed into a gray coat, simple yet sharp underneath. He'd even slicked back his hair. The guy oozed mature masculine charm, clearly dressed to impress. 2 girls behind us were giggling, then made a beeline for Richard. He was popular back then, and still is now, the kind of guy who always attracts attention. Richard gave them a polite smile, then pointed to me, smiling indulgently. I've got a girlfriend. We're just having a fight right now. The girls sighed in disappointment and looked at me with smiles that could only be described as ant-like. Your girlfriend is beautiful. What a perfect match. Upset her? Get her a little gift or something. Let her know she's loved, you know? Even strangers get it, Richard. and you still haven't figured it out after all these years. After the play, Richard walked behind me. The winter cold bit through every layer I wore. How about I walk you home? No. I promised to watch the play, and that's it, I said stubbornly. Sandy, I know I've been a lousy boyfriend before. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. Richard looked back, emotions swirling in his eyes. All around us, cars zoomed by, and buildings twinkled with colorful lights in the distance. He slowly approached me. Richard was a solid boyfriend, just not the right one. People were stunned when we got together. No one expected two people with almost no interactions to end up like this. Richard, who seemed above it all, falling in love. Seeing other couples with matching profile pics, I spent ages finding the perfect ones for us. Asked Richard to pick, he was nonchalant, whatever you like. For Valentine's, my roommate asked if I'd gotten him anything. I'd spent ages knitting him a scarf, but on the day he admitted he never kept track of dates and just handed me a generous cash gift when he saw how down I was. As for the scarf, he hardly ever wore it. When couples eat out, they chat and laugh, but with Richard, we just sat there like dinner buddies. We'd walk side by side on the college track at night. I'd often want to hold hands, but Richard never got the hint. Other couples kissed and hugged, but for us, it was like we were just friends. Morning greetings, lunch together, gifts on holidays, that was it. Why does everything have to be initiated by the girl? After a million tantrums from me, Richard started to change. He'd hold my hand, ask what I wanted before holidays. But his changes stopped there. I'd push, he'd move. Just one step at a time. I stuck it out for 7 years because I was head over heels for Richard. Whatever he did wrong, however much he ignored me, I'd forgive again and again. But I was getting older, thinking about the future. I wanted more, a commitment, but I couldn't marry without love. I rarely felt his affection, started having doubts, and didn't want to spend my life like this. So do you even like me? The question was buried inside me for so long, finally spilling out. The bitterness washed over me immediately, and I regretted asking. Tears streamed down as the cold wind hit my face. Richard pulled me into his arms. I do. I can't live without you. I'm just clueless about love. The scarf I gave you, you never wear it and call that like? He rubbed my back, triggering a fresh wave of upset. I kept it tucked away. Too precious to use. It's still in my closet, hidden away. Why can't you ever just reach out, get close to me? Why does it feel like we're worlds apart? You never remember holidays, but I recall every anniversary. Richard held me tight. I didn't have friends growing up, and family felt distant. You're the closest person in my life besides my grandfather. I just don't know how to show it. Intimate gestures like kissing and hugging always seemed intrusive to me. After we marry, I'll change. I've kept a record of every date you've mentioned, learned your preferences. Sandy, I know I'm kind of dense, but don't give up on me. I'm working on it. If you feel neglected, just tell me. I'll make time like other couples to have our own world. My hands, cold as they were, slipped into his pockets, and I found a notebook inside. I opened it to see it full of how to make your girlfriend happy guide. What is this? I grumbled. Rule 1, stick to her like glue, always admit you're wrong. Rule 2, take her to do things she likes. Rule 3, use yourself as bait to tempt her. So everything you've been doing lately is from this book? Richard rubbed his nose, looking sheepish. Yep. I thought you'd actually figured it out. His hand wrapped around mine, sharing his warmth. From what you're saying, it's working. You jerk. I half snapped, feeling slightly amused. The CEO taking extra lessons in love? Funny to even think about. Richard pulled me closer. So, can you please stop being mad at me? With a touch of sass, I let go of his hand. Alright, take me home first. Back home, the cold air faded a bit, and I looked outside. The sky was dark, slightly red. Looks like it's gonna snow again. In the living room, Richard stood like a poor stray, looking at me with hopeful eyes. Will you forgive me? I didn't respond, just grabbed a bottle of wine and headed to my study to practice my calligraphy. He followed me in. On the paper, I wrote, "The snow falls late, can't we just have a drink together?" Snowflakes twirled outside, but the bitter wind stayed away. Inside, it was warm and cozy. Turns out, I underestimated Richard. He's more capable than I thought.